can I just say one thing firstly? I love the name Eat, Sleep, Boxing, Repeat.
Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted as always to be joined by Elliot Grigg. We are reacting to the news that Kubrat Pulev, the WBA regular heavyweight champion, has been ordered to fight Moses Itauma. Moses Itauma, the biggest prospect in world boxing, against Pulev, who is more than double his age at the age of 44. Elliot, good to speak to you. Thank you for jumping on. Obviously, this fight has not been made official yet. But yeah, Pulev's in a position now where he can either fight Moses Itauma or vacate the belt. That's kind of that's the understanding. Thoughts on this fight? Thoughts on this fight possibly happening, Elliot? Because I feel like Moses Itauma, he's in a kind of a sticky situation where the guys he's been fighting recently have not been up to scratch, have not been able to take him past a couple of rounds. But then again, kind of, some might say it's too early for him to fight, say, kind of say an Alexander Usyk or an Ajit Kabayel. But what are your thoughts on this fight kind of possibly being made?
Yeah, the thoughts of this fight are positive, to be perfectly honest with you. You mentioned obviously the age gap there. I think, to be honest with you, I see Kubrat Pulev as being sort of more of a corpse than Dillian White, to be honest with you. I really see this as being a step down for Moses Itauma. Like, yeah, right, you can get a belt possibly, but it's got kind of Jake Paul feels about this, to be honest, from Itauma. Like, you're sitting there going, like, you want to see him in with someone decent, sort of test himself against some of those names in the sort of top 10, top 15. And you're fighting someone like, of 44 years old, whatever, who's been past his best for a long, long time. I mean, we were saying, he fought AJ in 2020, and he was past his best then.
Yeah.
Like, people were going, like, you probably shouldn't be going then.
Yeah.
And then you're still like, obviously since then he's fought Chisora, like, he's cracking on, whatever. But it's like, for me, this is not the fight for Moses Itauma. It really isn't. I don't think you're going to get, all right, you can pick up a belt, but I don't necessarily think you're going to get any kind of real credence from people in boxing. It might work for like a marketing level. People might say, oh, he's fought like contender Pulev, etc., hard opponent, whatever, like stuff like that. But people are going to look at this and go, this is a 44-year-old guy who's way past his best. Euro goes on the ascendancy, just come off a decent win against Dillian White. Even though I think, you and I spoke before that one, and I was saying, I don't think Dillian White's obviously in the class of Moses Itauma, and he himself is arguably like finished or should no longer be fighting. So what I'd like to see, really, I suppose, for Moses Itauma is someone with a pulse, someone that can sort of like be around that sort of top ten in the division, or even like even to be honest with you, even fight some of those British guys. Don't get me wrong, it's not got the sort of it's obviously not got the sort of credence as world level opposition, but like, I mean, obviously I know he fought last weekend, but would I rather see him fight Dave Allen than like Pulev? Probably. But I'd rather see him fight like, someone around that level. I'd rather see something like that, to be honest. But yes, I'm not that excited about it. Bit of a shame, but I also do think that, like you said, it's too soon for Town to start talking Usyk, but he needs to start kind of having some rounds with some decent, credible opposition, really. And this is not going to do that. I think this would be, if Pulev wants to sleep, take it. If not, don't.
Yeah, and it's a tricky one because I just think that I don't think Atama's last fight against Dillian White, which was it a minute that fight lasted. I don't think that fight did anything for Atama, apart from kind of the experience of being in main event and fighting in Saudi, which he'll almost definitely fight again. It didn't do anything for that. I just don't think it did anything for him. I think he needs rounds. He needs in-ring experience. He needs someone to go into that fight thinking they've got a chance of winning, which I don't really think Dillian White had, to be honest. And I just don't think a 44-year-old Kubrat Pulev is the answer. And my worry would be if this fight was to happen, Itauma gets rid of him in around maybe two, and we're in the same kind of situation where he's not kind of learned anything. And at the same time, people aren't particularly impressed because it's a Pulev who's 44 years old, kind of lost to Chisora a couple of years ago, lost every round to Anthony Joshua 5 years ago. So I'm with you, and yet you'd be picking up the WBA regular title, which by some people isn't seen as kind of like the strongest title to be a holder of as well. So I'm with you. Just to confirm, Elliot, if the fight did happen, do you think it would be a 1-2 round job, or do you think Pulev would be able to stand up to Itauma for a bit longer than that?
No, I think it'd be one round. I think if Itauma wanted to step on him, I think it'd be one round. I really do. I think that Pulev has been obviously like a tricky customer. Like, he's only been stopped twice in the fights he's had. So you have to look at one of those obviously against Anthony Joshua as well, who obviously back then was a different fight. The other one against Klitschko. So that's fair enough. He's lost. He's been stopped by good guys, but he's 44 years old now, and Itauma carries frightening power. Like we've seen him obviously. When he sort of lands, he tends to land with impact. So I really think. Kind of depends on what Talma would want to do. I think if Talma wants us to step on him and get him out in the first round, I expect him to do it. I don't expect, like, he's obviously got quick hands as well. I don't expect Pulev to be used to that at this stage. Like you say, he's 44 years old. I don't expect him to be able to deal with the speed of a Talma. He's obviously going to get caught. He obviously won't have the conditioning of a Talma as well. So, yeah, I think it'd be one round. And I just don't, like you said, I just don't think it does anything. It doesn't do nothing for me. Like, for a town where either really it's just you might as well just have it like as a sparring session. I suppose if he just turns up and stops him, goes home, carries on, goes straight back in the gym, you can almost take it like a continuity of just like sort of training rather than an actual event. But yeah, for me as an event, it doesn't do anything at all.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think we're in agreement here, so we're not going to be shouting at each other and debating each other on this one. But I do have one question before I let you go, Elliot. An alternative route for most of the Talma could be the WBO route. Joseph Parker and Fabio Wardley fight each other next week. Joseph Parker's the WBO interim champion. Alexander Usyk is obviously the full champion. Some people are on the understanding that if Joseph Parker wins next Saturday, he is the favorite to do so. He, rather than facing Usyk, he could be elevated to full champion in the next couple of months with Usyk vacating. Just thoughts on Itauma going through that route instead. Itauma's ranked number one, by the way. Itauma's due to fight December 13th. Assuming he wins that, I'm sure people will be talking about him possibly facing Joseph Parker March, April time of 2026. Give us your thoughts on that fight, because I personally think that's what's going to happen here, by the way. I'm not convinced we're going to see Itauma versus Pulev. I think we'll see Itauma versus Parker if Parker is to beat Fabio Wardley in March or April 2026. Thoughts on that fight for Itauma? Is that fight, is it too much of a step up for Itauma? Is it not enough of a step up? It will be for a world title. Does that appeal to you? Just general thoughts on that, please, Elliot.
Yeah, you know what I think. Well, I actually think Fabio Wardley's going to beat Joseph Parker, but either side, I think if he takes that route, I think the Parker fight's a good fight for Moses Tamer, actually. I think it's a good fight. I think we've seen the sort of in the resurgence that we've seen from Joe Parker. He's obviously durable. He's obviously got good conditioning. He's put on a bit of power as well. I still actually think Moses Tamer would beat him. I really do. I think Moses Tamer would stop Joe Parker. Just I don't think Joseph Parker would. Well, I suppose the question mark over Tamer is you haven't really seen him be hit yet. Like I'm not necessarily saying that like Joe Parker's got that one punch KO power, but we haven't actually seen his chin tested really. So for me, actually, if he fought Wardley, that might be interesting. If Wardley just came out swinging, could Wardley land on the town and actually cause a bit of an upset? Possibly. I don't think Joseph Parker could do that. So I do think he would get stopped again. I think Town speed and power would stop Joe Parker. I think for me, though, that is the sort of opponent I'd like to see him in with someone like Joe Parker, maybe like a Hergovich, someone like that. And even to be honest with you, we saw him last weekend. Even someone, I think he battered Makhmudov, but even someone like Makhmudov that like wanted to turn up and have a bit of a fight would be better than a Pulev. So yeah, I think Itama would be any of those guys that I've sort of mentioned. I don't, but yeah, I think that's the sort of route I would be looking to take, and then from there, you probably can then talk if he beats a Parker, if he beats like a Hogan, it's one of those sort of names. You could go actually, maybe like he deserves the kind of Usyk shot that people seem to be sort of springboarding him into. But until then,
Yeah.
I'm not convinced, and I'm also, to be honest with you, not sure I'd want to see that fight either. Just because I think like Usyk, depending on the injuries he's had, the age he's got as well, I feel like real solid test for Usyk. And if he comes unstuck as a slightly diminished version, that would sadden me a little bit as well, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, it's exciting. Like Itauma, he's just not been tested yet. Still only 20 years old, which is incredible. But we'll see. Like as we're speaking, he's he is fighting on December 13th in Manchester, fighting in under 2 months' time now. We still don't have an opponent. We're hoping that gets announced soon. See what happens. But look, it's still exciting. But I think we're in agreement here that I don't think a fight against a 44-year-old Kubrat kind of whets the appetite and gets the popcorn out. Maybe not, but we'll see what
Mm.
happens. Elliot, thank you so much for joining me. Yeah, I'm sure we'll speak again soon. Lots going on at the moment. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, as always, guys. Thank you for watching.